right, good afternoon. Welcome to another Tech Talk Tuesday, wrapping up Cybersecurity Awareness Month. Today, we're going to talk about incident response plans, protecting your digital fortress, and why that is a critical component of any cybersecurity plan. We kind of touched on it last week during the talk about protecting data. It is important to have one. One of the more important pieces of any cybersecurity plan, but today we're going to dive into what an incident response plan is and have a little gift for you at the end. So what is an incident response plan? An incident response plan, IRP for short, is a structured and coordinated approach that an organization follows to manage and mitigate the impact of security incidents or data breaches effectively. The primary goal of an IRP is to minimize the damage caused by an incident, reduce recovery time, and maintain the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of critical systems and data. So that's a mouthful, right? What does that mean? It means what happens if there is a breach? First of all, what do we do? First of all, you should do everything you can to prevent a breach, and we're going to touch on that really quickly at the end, kind of a segue into our next Tech Talk Tuesday, which will be 2 weeks away. But we'll get to that later. So some things you can do to protect yourself. We've talked quite a bit about that this month. But we're going to talk one thing we didn't talk about, we'll get towards at the end. But then what happens if there is an incident? What happens if you have some kind of breach or some kind of malicious activity? What happens then? What do you do? How do you minimize the damage? How do you communicate this out to everybody else? And how do you protect the CIA triad of data and systems integrity? So that's confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So we've got to continue working. So what are some of the key elements of an IRP? There's preparation. This phase involves proactive measures taken to prepare for potential cybersecurity incidents. It includes tasks such as establishing an incident response team, defining roles and responsibilities, and developing policies and procedures and creating an inventory of critical assets. That's part of your risk assessment, the inventory. You need to know what you have in order to protect it. Detection and analysis. During this phase, the organization focuses on identifying security incidents. It includes monitoring network traffic, system logs, and security alerts. Analysis helps determine the scope and severity of the incident. So it could be something as simple as clicked on a link, that's an incident. Or it could be something as complex as your one of your computers has malware on it, possibly encrypted. What do we do? And that's much more serious. Or data theft, some type of data theft incident. Containment. Once an incident is confirmed, the goal is to prevent it from spreading further and causing additional damage. Containment actions may involve isolating affected systems, restricting access, or shutting down compromised services. So, and again, clicked on a link that turns out to be phishing, probably just change your password, make sure two-factor authentication at minimum is turned on, and monitor that account for suspicious logins. In the event of a system that has malware on it or some type of breach on it, you isolate that from the system immediately from the rest of the network, and so forth. Eradication and recovery. After containment, the organization works on removing the root cause of the incident. That's the eradication part, and restoring affected systems to their normal state, and that's recovery. This phase aims to eliminate vulnerabilities that led to the incident and minimize downtime. So you've isolated the system. Now you're going to remove the root cause, whatever the problem might be, and I'll share a scenario with you in a moment, and then return it to a normal state. Post-incident activities. After an incident is resolved, there are post-incident activities such as documenting the incident, analyzing lessons learned, and making improvements to the incident response plan and security posture. This is ongoing stuff. Whatever there's an incident, what do you do in the future so that you can further protect your data and your business, but also what have you learned? And make sure you document it, because if you don't document things, you forget. It's easy to forget things. Just an example of printer setting I couldn't remember how to fix yesterday. It was a simple fix. It was a few clicks on the printer, but I just couldn't remember how to do it because the last time I fixed it, I didn't document it. Communication. Effective communication is essential throughout the incident response process. This includes internal communication among incident response team members, as well as external communications with stakeholders, customer, law enforcement, if necessary, and regulatory bodies as required by data protection regulations. So those groups we talked about last week during the Protect Your Data webinar, protect your client's data, really. And we talked about who you have to report to, and depending on what your business does and what state it operates in, you may have multiple organizations or multiple groups that you need to report to. So if you're a healthcare in Connecticut, you will need to report to the OCR, and you also need to report to the Connecticut Attorney General. Legal and compliance considerations. An IRP should address legal and compliance aspects, including requirements related to data breach notifications, evidence preservation, and regulatory reporting. Testing and drills. Regularly testing and conducting drills of the incident response plan helps ensure that team members are familiar with their roles and that the plan is effective. Testing can reveal weaknesses that need to be addressed. And continuous improvement. Organizations should use insights from incident responses to enhance their overall security posture continually. Lessons learned should be used to refine policies, procedures, and security measures. Finally, detailed documentation of each incident response is crucial for future reference, legal purposes, and regulatory compliance. Again, you can't fix a problem if you don't know you have a problem, or if you don't know how you fixed it the last time. Let's talk about some statistics here, because I love these numbers. In the first half of 2022, there were 236.1 million ransomware attacks globally. During 2021, at least 15.45% of internet users worldwide experienced at least one malware class attack, which includes ransomware. I would venture to guess that number is a lot higher than that. Malware is rampant. Ransomware accounted for around 20% of cyber breaches in 2022. So 1 in 5 cyber breaches were ransomware. For comparison, using stolen credentials, which is why we talked about passwords, your password sucks, a few weeks ago, accounted for 40% of breaches in 2022, and phishing accounts for around 20%. So that's 80% of your breaches are ransomware, stolen credentials, and phishing. Almost 80%. I bet the other 20% has something to do with unpatched vulnerabilities. The average ransom in 2023 is 1.54 million, almost double the 2022 figure of $812,380. So they're just raising their prices, inflation, like everything else. The average downtime a company experiences after a ransomware attack is 22 days. And in 2022, organizations around the world detected nearly 500 million ransomware attacks. Now, that doesn't mean they were all successful. So I'll share the scenario I wanted to share with you a few minutes ago. I took over a client early this year, and when I took over, it's a smaller client. They only had about half a dozen employees. One of the systems had a backdoor on it. So when we took over, we set up our stack, and within a few hours, we were notified that this computer was breached and had a backdoor on it. The computer, because of the way we set up things, was instantly disconnected from everything. We had to, of course, wipe the computer, start from scratch, and then reintroduce it to the network. But this is how fast it happens. So the previous provider, we did inherit this customer from another IT vendor. The previous provider was unaware of this problem and didn't address it because they didn't know it existed. So they may have been minutes away from a ransomware attack. They may have been, sometimes these ransomware gangs hang out on networks for months or years before they actually launch the attack. So they could have been close, and it would have been very devastating. It is a business in the financial world. Could have been very devastating to a lot of people. So who should prepare the plan? Preparing an incident response plan, IRP for short again, you'll hear me say IRP more often than not, is a crucial step in ensuring an organization's cybersecurity readiness. It is something that you start developing when you start your risk assessment, but it's never completely done, never 100% done, because you need to add to it as you go and as things happen. While the responsibility for creating an IRP typically falls on the IT and cybersecurity teams, it is a collaborative effort, and that word is important in IT and cybersecurity more so, that involves multiple stakeholders across the organization. And here are key individuals and teams that should be involved in the preparation of an incident response plan. So you have your information security team. The core responsibility for developing and maintaining the IRP usually rests with the information security team of the Chief Information Security Officer. They are responsible for overall cybersecurity strategy and incident management. The IT department, IT professionals play a significant role in implementing the technical aspects of the IRP, such as monitoring systems for security incidents and containing incidents and restoring systems. Your legal and compliance team, legal experts are essential for ensuring that IRP complies with applicable laws and regulations, especially regarding data breach notifications, evidence preservation, and regulatory reporting. Executive management, of course, you got to get the C-level execs involved, right? They should be aware of the IRP and support its development and implementation. They may also be involved in decision-making during significant incidents. HR teams can provide assistance in incident response by helping to manage internal communications, addressing employee-related issues, and ensuring that employees are aware of their roles. Communication and public relations. Communications experts should be prepared to handle external communications during and after significant incident, including notifying customers, partners, and media if necessary. External partners. In some cases, external partners such as incident response firms, legal counsel, and law enforcement agencies may be involved in incident response activities, especially for major incidents. Sometimes the FBI I3, I think it is, that group sometimes get involved, or Homeland Security might get involved, depending on the organization or depending on how big the incident is. Business units and department heads. Representatives from various business units and departments within the organization should be consulted to identify critical assets. You can't possibly, in a larger organization, can't possibly identify all the critical assets on your own. Potential risks and determine the impact of incidents on business operations. Risk management team. The risk management team can help assess the potential risks and financial implications associated with different types of incidents. Third-party vendors and service providers. We talked a little bit about third-party vendors last week and their importance in making sure that they have a risk assessment done, but also that you know what the risks are. If the organization relies on third-party vendors or service providers for critical functions, they should be included in discussions about incident response, as incidents affecting these vendors can impact the organization. Internal audit teams can provide an independent review of IRP to ensure it aligns with best practices and industry standards. Training and awareness teams responsible for employee training and awareness programs can help educate staff about the roles and responsibilities in the event of a security incident. Technical experts, depending on the nature of the organization and its IT infrastructure, technical experts such as network admins, system admins, database admins, server admins may provide valuable insights into incident response planning. Again, the key word being collaboration. Now, in smaller businesses, which is the target audience of these Tech Talk Tuesdays, some of these roles will overlap, right? You may not have, my clients hire me to be their IT department, so we take care of that. You may have a lawyer that handles your contracts and your legal documents. You may have the IT team may also be your information security team and your IT experts. You may have somebody that does HR in your organization, even though their title isn't HR. So some of these will overlap. Communication and public relations, sometimes it's your marketing team. So some of those will overlap in smaller businesses, and that's why it's important that you have that collaborative piece to make sure that it works, that the IRP is going to be effective in your business, and if and when it's time to use it, you're ready. Why do you need a plan? Why is this important? Why is it an important part of cybersecurity? Well, first of all, it minimizes damage. Cybersecurity incidents can have severe consequences, including data breaches, financial losses, reputational damage, and legal liabilities. An effective incident response plan helps organizations minimize the impact of such incidents by swiftly containing and mitigating them. Rapid threat identification. Incidents often involve malicious activities that can remain undetected from for an extended period of time. Incident, like I said, sometimes months or years. Incident response enables organizations to identify and respond to threats quickly, reducing the time that attackers have to operate within the network. Again, we identified a risk, upon taking over a new client, we immediately addressed it. Compliance and legal obligations. Many industries and regions have regulations and compliance requirements that mandate incident response planning and reporting. Failing to comply with these regulations can result in fines and legal penalties. And these laws are getting stricter by the month. So I think almost every state is now either already has a data privacy act or is implementing one, trying to put one together. So it's only a matter of time before the US has one, like the GDPR. But for now, most states are either working on one or have one. If you're in Connecticut, you have one. If you're in Florida, you have one that will start next summer. Maintaining business continuity. Cyber incidents can disrupt business operations, causing downtime and financial losses. Effective incident response helps organizations maintain business continuity by minimizing downtime and ensuring that critical systems are restored promptly. Preserving customer trust. Data breaches and other security incidents erode customer trust. There is a statistic for the auto industry, something like 94% of customers would lose trust and go somewhere else if they found out that the auto dealership was breached. It's a pretty significant number. A well-handled incident response demonstrates to customers, partners, and stakeholders that the organization takes security seriously and is committed to safeguarding their data and privacy. So what does that mean? It means don't delay in reporting, don't try to cover it up. And if you're going to report a security incident, and again, yes, you need to, don't try to minimize the impact. So, if an organization says, yeah, it only affects 20 people, so I'll take the LinkedIn breach from the mid-2010s, 2015, 2016. Initially, they said, I think 10,000 people might have been impacted by it, which is still a significant number. But then they came back later and said much more, and the millions were impacted by it. So whether it was not knowing or they didn't want it to seem like a big deal, now people lose trust in the business because that's not what you said initially. So maybe it could have been stated differently if you weren't sure yet, but that's an important piece to preserving customer trust. Collecting evidence. In the event of a security incident, collecting and preserving evidence is essential for investigating the incident, identifying the attacker's tactics, techniques, and procedures, TTPs. This is a common acronym in the cybersecurity world, and supporting legal actions if necessary. So if the system shouldn't be reintroduced right away, you need to collect data, see how they got in, what they did, and then document, of course. Enhancing cybersecurity posture. Analyzing security incidents and their root causes helps organizations identify vulnerabilities and weaknesses in their systems and processes. This information can inform cybersecurity improvements and help prevent future incidents. Timely communication and incident response planning includes communication strategies for notifying internal and external stakeholders about an incident. Effective communication helps manage the public relations aspect of a breach and prevents misinformation from spreading. Resource allocation. Incident response plans allocate resources efficiently during a crisis. This includes coordinating the efforts of IT, legal, public relations, and other teams to respond effectively to the incident. Continuous improvement. We talked about that earlier. Proactive defense and ARP includes measures to prevent future incidents based on insights gained from past incidents. This proactive approach helps organizations stay ahead of evolving threats. And regulatory requirements. Again, your compliance rules for state, any federal compliance rules you may have, whether it's GLBA or HIPAA or some other compliance rules, all those things apply to regulatory requirements. So what are the 5 key components to an incident response plan? So first you have preparation. Incident response team is formed. Policy and procedure development. Develop and document policies, procedures, and guidelines for incident response. These documents should outline the organization's approach to incident handling, including reporting mechanisms and escalation procedures. Take an inventory of all your assets, critical assets. I would say anything that connects to your network is a critical asset. Even right down to your smart devices, smart thermostat, or smart, TV, anything, because those could be vulnerabilities. Those could be ways in. If you're in healthcare, a lot of healthcare devices connect to a network and often have outdated operating systems. So all of those things need to be accounted for. Training and awareness, you will hear me emphasize training and awareness over and over and over again. This is why we're doing Tech Talk Tuesday, because I think training is super important in the cybersecurity war. That's what it is. It's a cybersecurity war. Incident response tools, acquire and deploy the necessary tools and technologies for monitoring, detection, and incident analysis. Legal and regulatory compliance, ensure that the IRP complies with relevant legal and regulatory requirements, including data breach notification laws. So, for example, if you are under HIPAA, you have to notify the OCR, HHS OCR within 60 days of a breach. Oops, sorry. Let's go back to that. The 5 key components. We're going to break down each component a little further. Detection and analysis. So you want to set up monitoring for network traffic, for system logs, and security alerts. As an example, I have a client who's one of their employees traveled outside of the country. I was not aware. We got an alert the day they left the country and logged in from another country, which is not normal behavior for this client. So I questioned it, was prepared to lock the account down, and turned out it was legitimate, but we're always monitoring for these things. Incident identification, investigate and validate potential incidents, determine if they represent genuine security threats. Incident triage, categorize and prioritize incidents based on their severity, potential impact, and urgency. We are set up so that if there is something detected on a system, it is immediately disconnected. We don't even have to physically remove it, although I would call the client and say, unplug it. But it is immediately disconnected from everything. Usually they call me and say, I can't get on the internet or I can't get on the network. So forensic analysis, conduct forensic analysis to gather evidence and understand the scope of and nature of the incident. Then you have containment. This is key 3. The containment phase involves making immediate actions to limit the spread and impact of the security incident. Again, the isolation. What other containment measures do you have? Implement containment measures such as disabling compromised accounts, closing vulnerable network ports, or applying access controls to restrict unauthorized access. One of the things we do is part of what we'll talk about right at the end, but we, by default, close all network ports. We don't open anything, and we only open what's absolutely necessary. Communication, communicate internally with stakeholders about the ongoing containment efforts to maintain transparency and coordination. Number 4, eradication and recovery. What do you do during this phase? So you have your root cause analysis, remediation, data restoration. So hopefully you have backups somewhere, testing, and communication again to key stakeholders. 5, your post-incident activities. What did you learn and did you document it? Let's make sure it's all documented. Post-incident reporting and continuous improvement. Again, you will hear that for risk assessments and you will hear that for incident response plans. Continuous improvement. So the 5 keys here. So first up is your preparation. Preparation phase of an incident response plan involves a series of proactive activities and preparations that are put in place before a security incident occurs. This phase is crucial for ensuring that an organization is well prepared to respond effectively when a security incident does happen. So here you have your policy and procedure development. What are the clear and well-documented policies and procedures and guidelines for incident response? That would include who does what. These documents define the organization's approach to handling incidents, including how incidents are reported, what constitutes an incident, and how incidents are escalated and managed. Having these policies in place ensures consistency and clarity during incident response efforts. Asset inventory. Again, you're going to take an inventory of your critical assets. We talked about that already, but anything that really can be a a foothold into your network needs to be inventoried. Training and awareness. We need to train everybody on the incident response plan, who does what, and who to report to. In incident response tools, these are the tools that are used for monitoring, detection, and incident analysis. Legal and regulatory compliance. This is something that often isn't really well communicated to the team of a business. Sometimes they don't know what compliance they may have. So you could have PCI, which is if you accept credit cards, you have to be PCI compliant. If you are in healthcare, you have to be HIPAA compliant. There are healthcare organizations. Okay, so that's not 100% accurate, but most healthcare organizations fall under HIPAA. And if they do, often the practice is not, all the employees are not aware of this, or the business associates are not aware. And business associate is a vendor of the healthcare provider. If you're in financial world, and that is some of those businesses are kind of gray area, but it's pretty much if you have financial transactions and collect data from customers for the purpose of those financial transactions, you fall under that umbrella, the GLBA, the FTC safeguard rules. So these, sometimes businesses, I can promise you, there are businesses out there that are not aware of these things. Maybe at the C-level executives, but all the way down, no. Communication and coordination. You got to communicate that you have an incident response plan and a team that goes along with it. Communicate it to external stakeholders, and effective communication ensures that all team members are on the same page and that the organization can coordinate its response efforts smoothly when an incident occurs, not recurs. We don't want recurring incidents. Phase 2, detection and analysis. So now we're going to set up monitoring. So you have continuous monitoring, which involves using a variety of tools and technologies to collect data from different parts of the organization's infrastructure. That could include network traffic and system logs and security alerts. What about computer updates, software updates, unauthorized logins, attempted brute force logins, network intrusions? All of these things should be continuously monitored. Anomaly detection. This is if something unusual happens within the network or on a system, or even email accounts. Like I said, somebody tried to log in from another country. Yesterday morning, we got an alert. That's not normal behavior, so we address it. Intrusion detection systems and intrusion prevention systems. You want the latter if you can, to monitor network traffic for known attack signatures and to proactively prevent potential intrusions. Incident identification. This is where we start doing incident reporting. Encourage all employees to promptly report any suspicious activities or potential incidents. Establish clear channels and procedures for reporting incidents to the incident response team. And incident identification teams assign specialized teams or individuals who are trained to identify potential incidents, investigate alerts, and determine if they represent genuine security threats. Usually I have a team that gets these alerts and then reviews them for validity and to see if there's anything that needs to be addressed, depending on the nature of the incident. Sometimes those incidents require, again, immediate action. And sometimes that action might seem extreme, disconnecting a computer from the network, and maybe it was all for naught, but it's better to be on the safe side than on the side that didn't take that precaution. Incident triage and analysis. Categorize and prioritize incidents based on their severity, potential impact, and urgency. This helps in allocating resources effectively and responding to the most critical incidents first. Threat intelligence. Leverage threat intelligence feeds and services to understand the evolving threat landscape and identity indicators of compromise. These are IOCs associated with known threats. And forensic analysis. Conduct forensic analysis to gather evidence and determine the scope and nature of the incident. This may involve analyzing system logs, examining affected systems, and documenting findings. Tools and technology. Security information and event management. These are SIMs. These are things that will gather all your security logs and put them in one location to be reviewed, and then alerting if something does get flagged. Log management systems. These systems collect, store, and analyze log data from different devices and applications, providing valuable insights into system activities and potential incidents. Endpoint detection and response tools, EDR solutions monitor and respond to threats at the endpoint level, providing real-time visibility into actions on individual devices. Endpoint detection, I sort of call this the modern malware detection or modern antivirus, next level antivirus, because this is what came of what used to be the Norton and McAfee of the world. And this is why I tell people Norton and McAfee no longer valid solutions for malware protection because they don't do these things. Security analytics tools. Advanced analytics tools can help identify patterns and anomalies in data, assisting in the early detection of security incidents. Then phase 3 or section 3 of your incident response plan, and that's containment. Now we need to isolate affected systems. That could involve unplugging it from the network or shutting it down, which is probably not the best plan, but unplugging it, disconnect it from the network is best. That can be automated. You don't need to have somebody unplug the Ethernet cable, although I would still say do it even if the automation is in place. And then segment it from using network segmentation. This way, if the HR team does have breach detected, they can't go lateral to other networks within the organization. And that's where you involve firewall rules, VLANs, and other network security measures. We also recommend that if you do have Internet of Things devices, those are your smart thermostats, your VoIP phones, your TVs, even in some cases refrigerators and things like that. You want to segment those from the rest of the network. Containment measures, blocking malicious activity. Identify and block any malicious activities associated with the incident. This could involve blocking specific IP addresses, domains, or communication channels used by the attacker. As an example, if I use, again, Microsoft 365, will block most countries, and that's, especially the high-risk countries, North Korea, Russia, Ukraine, Iran, China. Those countries get blocked unless there's a reason for that business to be doing business with one of those countries. Disabling compromised accounts. If the incident involves compromised user accounts, immediately disable those accounts to prevent further unauthorized access. And this is a regular practice of ours. If the account is dormant, it's going to get blocked anyway. Changing credentials in cases where credentials have been compromised, change passwords, keys, or tokens to revoke the attacker's access. And even if you don't think your credentials are compromised, but you did click on a link, change it, or you did download a document, change it. Communication, internal communications, maintain clear communications within the incident response team and with other relevant stakeholders. Ensure that all team members are aware of the containment measures being implemented and their roles in the process. External communication, if necessary, communicate with external parties such as law enforcement, third-party vendors as partners about the incident and containment efforts. Monitoring and verification, continuous monitoring, continuously monitor isolated systems and network segments to ensure that the containment measures are effective and that there are no signs of further compromise, and verify that containment measures have been successfully implemented and the incident has been contained. Regularly assess the situation to determine if additional actions are required. And of course, documentation. We talk about that. Let's highlight the importance of isolating affected systems for a moment. Why do we need to isolate that system immediately if we detect that something is amiss on that system, a data breach, malware, something? Because a few reasons. One, it prevents lateral movement, because once they gain access to one system, they will continue to look to see where else they can get on your network. They will see what other computers they can access. They will see what other networking devices they can access, what servers you have control, what data is accessible from your computer. And that's where what backups are available to be destroyed, because that's exactly what they will do. They don't want you to be able to restore. So that's reason number one. Protecting critical assets. Again, if you have a server filled with data, you're going to want to protect that. Backups that you can restore from, you're going to want to protect that. And if you have any sensitive data. Reducing scope, isolating affected systems reduces the scope of the incident, making it easier to contain and remediate. This focused approach allows for more efficient allocation of resources and preserving evidence, because you should be doing a forensic analysis once you've managed to isolate the attack. Now, phase 4, the eradication and recovery. So root cause analysis, again, that's part of the investigation after the fact. First step on this phase is to conduct a thorough analysis of the incident to determine how it occurred, what vulnerabilities were exploited, and what actions led to the breach. This way, you're able to identify the weaknesses that need to be addressed and take care of those weaknesses and vulnerabilities, thus preventing future attacks. Because once you've been attacked, you now have a bigger target on your back. Remediation and mitigation. Develop and implement remediation plans to address the identified vulnerabilities and weaknesses. This includes patching, configuration changes, and security enhancements. So all those people with the MoveIt data breach that we talked about last week a little bit. This is a supply chain attack of sorts. They need to patch the MoveIt if they're going to continue to use it. Patch the MoveIt software to ensure that they're not breached going forward. There was a patch released pretty quickly after they identified the vulnerability, but a lot of organizations did not patch immediately. Remediation measures are essential for eliminating the security threat and reducing the risk of future incidents. Data restoration. Hopefully you have a clean backup that you can restore from. One of the reasons it's important to verify that your backup is clean, meaning that you didn't inadvertently back up the malicious application or the malicious software or the malicious whatever file before you restore. Testing and verification. Thoroughly test and verify that systems are secure and functioning correctly before bringing them back online. So you'll want to do some scans and make sure everything is clean, unless you are, of course, replacing the system or doing a wipe. Communication. Again, communicating with communicating with key stakeholders. That includes employees, customers, and partners, and keep them informed of the progress of eradication and recovery efforts. That's really key. A lot of times when there's a breach, you have, depending on the size of the organization and the size of the breach and the system's impact, you may have hourly bridge calls or an ongoing bridge call. I've been on some of those. They're not fun. So you stay on that call while you're working through eradicating the issue. And then backups and recovery plans. What are you doing with backups? Are they being tested? How do you recover from them? And have you tested the recovery plan? And redundancy and failover. So the backup plan that is usually recommended today is the 3-2-1 backup plan, which means you have 3 backups, 2 in either on-site or in the cloud, and then the other one the opposite. So if you have 2 in the cloud, you have 1 on site. If you have 1 in the cloud, you have 2 on site. And various methods of backup. We're not going to go into all of the different methods of backup, and then of course your post-incident activities. This is phase 5. Conduct a formal review of the incident response effort to identify what worked well and areas that need improvement. Analyze the incident response process from start to finish. Identify success, challenges, and bottlenecks encountered during the incident response. Gather feedback from incident response team members and stakeholders. Document lessons learned to inform future incident response efforts. Remember to keep in mind that it is a collaborative effort, and I cannot put enough emphasis on that word. I've been part of these incident response efforts where they do this formal review, and sometimes it's finger pointing. It's, oh, is that team's fault or was this team's fault? That's not what's important. What's important is you identify the root cause, how you fix it, and then how to prevent it in the future. It's important because learning from past incidents is critical for refining incident response procedures and enhancing an organization's ability to handle future security threats effectively. Of course, you have your documentation again. So maintain detailed records of the incident, response actions, and outcomes for various purposes, including legal, regulatory, and internal reporting. Activities compile all incident-related documentation, including incident reports, analysis findings, and communication logs. Store documentation securely to ensure its availability for future reference. And this is important because proper documentation provides a historical record of the incident, which can be invaluable for compliance audits and incident investigations. The post-incident reporting, prepare incident reports summarizing the incident's details, response actions taken, and lessons learned. Make sure you create comprehensive incident reports that capture the incident's timeline, impact, and response efforts, and share incident reports with relevant stakeholders, including executive leadership and regulatory authorities if required. Most of the time, I will say it is required. Post-incident reports serve as a formal record of the incident and the organization's response. They may be necessary for regulatory compliance and legal purposes. Continuous improvement. Notice that's one of the ones I keep repeating, right? Make sure we're continuously improving upon our incident response plan and also our risk assessment with what we've learned from this incident and its resolution. Legal considerations. Address any legal considerations that may arise from incidents, such as evidence preservation or compliance with data protection laws. You should consult legal counsel to ensure that all legal and regulatory obligations are met and cooperate with law enforcement or regulatory agencies as required. And this is important because adhering to legal requirements is crucial to avoid potential legal repercussions and to ensure that evidence is preserved for investigations or legal actions. And your post-incident review. Conduct a formal post-incident review with relevant stakeholders, including the incident response team and executive leadership. Sometimes this is multiple meetings. You have one with the incident response team and then another one with everybody. Review the incident response process, including the effectiveness of containment, eradication, and recovery efforts. Discuss the organization's overall response to the incident and identify areas for improvement. And again, it's a collaborative effort. Shouldn't be any finger pointing, but there should be some hard truths that come out and say, we could have done this better, we could have done that better. Why is this important? Because a post-incident review provides an opportunity to assess the overall effectiveness of the organization's incident response capability and to make necessary adjustments. Plan development. Developing an effective incident response plan is a critical step in an organization's cybersecurity strategy. It involves a structured process that ensures the organization is well prepared to respond to security incidents. The development of an IRP should be a collaborative effort. There's that word again, involving key stakeholders from various departments within the org. So what are the key steps on plan development? First, you define objectives and scope. Pretty self-explanatory. What do you need to cover and who needs to be involved? Identify key stakeholders. Conduct a risk assessment. Not going to go into a whole lot of detail on that right now. We talked about it a few times during Cybersecurity Awareness Month, but a risk assessment, you identify all the potential risks within the organization. And that could be anything from, an unpatched Windows 10 computer all the way up to what happens if a hurricane hits. Develop policies and procedures based on what you've uncovered in the risk assessment and the business needs and regulatory compliance needs. Define incident categories and severity levels. Develop communication plans. Who do you need to communicate with? How will you communicate with those people? Some organizations choose emails, others choose formal letters in the mail, others choose phone calls, others choose notifications on the website. And I think it really depends on the nature of the breach. Some will choose multiple avenues, and I think that's probably the best method. And then, again, identify key stakeholders, which include public relations and communications teams, training and awareness programs, part of the plan development. So you need to create these training awareness programs to educate all employees, regardless of their role, but focus on the role that they have in the incident response plan. Testing and validation. Regularly test the IRP through tabletop exercises, simulations, and drills to ensure that all stakeholders are familiar with their roles and that the plan is effective. Review and update. Periodically review and update the IRP to account for changes in technology, threats, and organization structure. So as an example, if you decide, you have 30 Windows 10 computers that can't be updated to Windows 11, now you're going to replace those with Windows 11 because you have a little less than 2 years now to do that. So you start that rollout now, you need to update your plan. Testing and drills. How do you validate that your IRP is effective? Testing and drills validate the effectiveness of the IRP. They help ensure that the documented procedures and response strategies actually work in practice. Familiarity with procedures. This is important because regular exercise familiarize incident response teams and other stakeholders with their roles and responsibilities during a security incident. This familiarity leads to more efficient and coordinated responses. Identification of gaps and weaknesses. Again, not to point fingers, but to strengthen your cybersecurity posture and your IRP. Testing and drills help identify gaps, weaknesses, and bottlenecks in the IRP. These identified issues can be addressed and improved upon before a real incident occurs. Assessment of response times. Through testing, organizations can measure response times for various incident scenarios. This assessment helps set realistic expectations for how quickly incidents can be detected and contained. Evaluation of communication. Excuse me, let me take a sip of water here. Testing communication plans during drills ensures that the organization can effectively communicate with internal and external stakeholders, maintaining transparency and trust during incidents. Having that method of communication is important. Well, how will that be communicated out? Will it be through email? What happens if email is the focus of the incident? So if email is down because there's an email incident, then what? How do you communicate it? Is it through text messaging? Is it through website communication? Is it through smoke signals? What are you going to do to communicate that there's an incident? Training and skill development. Again, I talk about training all the time, but you have to train and teach your employees, everybody within the organization, what they need to do, how to do it effectively, and how they can improve. Continuous improvement. Speaking of improving, this is where regular testing and drills facilitate a culture of continuous improvement, and they also facilitate a security culture in general. Having a security culture within your business is critical. If you don't have that culture, your business is at a big disadvantage to potential threats out there. Confidence building. Successfully completing drills and exercises builds confidence among incident response teams and stakeholders. This confidence is crucial for responding effectively during actual security incidents. Regulatory and compliance requirements. Some regulatory frameworks and compliance standards require organizations to test and validate their incident response plans regularly. Failure to comply with these requirements can result in legal and financial consequences. And risk mitigation. By identifying and addressing weaknesses in the IRP through testing, organizations reduce the risk of inadequate incident response, which can lead to increased damage, financial losses, and reputational harm. And we don't want to harm that reputation. Reporting incidents. So reporting is going to vary depending on what type of organization you have, meaning what is your vertical and where you operate. So responsibility belongs to any employee internally, any employee who suspects or observes a security incident, no matter how minor, has the responsibility to initiate the reporting process. Immediate action. Upon identifying a potential security incident, individuals should take immediate action to contain the situation if possible and to prevent further damage or data loss. Again, disconnecting that computer from the network, locking that email account, whatever it might be. Internal reporting. Again, employees should report the incident internally to the organization's designated incident response team or contact point. This reporting mechanism should be clearly communicated to all staff members. You can even put posters on posters. We like posters, right? The report should include detailed information about the incident, such as the date and time of discovery, the nature of the incident, affected systems or data, and any actions taken to mitigate the incident. Incident triage, the incident response team or designated personnel should triage the incident to determine its severity and potential impact. Categorization, incidents may be categorized based on their type, such as malware infection, data breach, or denial of service attack to help prioritize responses. Then you have escalation, severity-based escalation depending on the incident's severity. It may be escalated to higher levels of management, including executive leadership and legal or compliance teams. In some cases, especially when incidents involve legal or compliance or regulatory compliance, external reporting to law enforcement or relevant authorities may be necessary. Incident documentation, again, make sure you're keeping detailed records of the incident, including how it was mitigated, analysis, and so forth. Communication logs. Communication plans, internal communication, ensure that communication plans are in place to notify employees, relevant departments, and stakeholders about the incident, its status, and any actions being taken. And external communications, develop communication plans for notifying customers, partners, regulatory authorities, and public if required. Legal and regulatory compliance, we touched on that already, but you will need to report to those groups that you should report to, but you should talk to legal counsel before doing that. Incident analysis, conduct a comprehensive analysis of the incident to determine its root cause, impact, and any potential data breaches or vulnerabilities that need addressing. Remediation, immediate action once the incident has been reported and assessed, take immediate actions to mitigate further harm, eradicate the threat and recover affected systems and data. And preventative measures, implement measures to prevent similar incidents in the future, including patching vulnerabilities and enhancing security controls. Continuous monitoring, post-incident monitoring after the incident has been reported and mitigated, continue to monitor systems for any signs of reoccurrence or additional threats. A lot of times, cyber attacks will leave another way in. So you may have identified the original threat, but there may be another threat you're not aware of. And then final report, document the incident response process, findings and actions taken, and outcomes in a final incident report. This report is essential for post-incident analysis, compliance, and legal purposes. Legal and compliance considerations. Again, we've talked about this a lot last week, so I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail here. GDPR, yes, that's Europe. However, if you operate in Europe in any way, you have European clients, then you fall under GDPR. CCPA is the California Consumer Protection Act. You have Connecticut DPA, which is the Connecticut Data Privacy Act. HIPAA, Colorado has an act. I don't know the name of it. You have the GLBA or the FTC safeguard rules. There's a whole bunch of different data privacy laws that we have to contend with. Making sure you know who to report to is important. Regulatory requirements. Certain industries and jurisdictions require organizations to report security incidents to relevant regulatory authorities within specific timeframes. Failure to do so may result in penalties. Again, if I use the HIPAA example, you have to report within 60 days of the breach. Legal counsel. You should engage legal counsel if you don't have your own internal team. You should hire a privacy attorney at minimum to help you with this. And if you need a good one, I can help you with that. Evidence preservation, chain of custody. Maintain a chain of custody for digital evidence collected during the incident response process. Adhering to strict evidence handling protocols is essential for legal proceedings. Law enforcement cooperation, that's pretty self-explanatory. Make sure you cooperate with law enforcement. Contracts and agreements for third parties. Review contracts and agreements with third-party vendors, partners, or service providers to determine responsibilities and liabilities in the event of a security incident. Post-incident legal action, litigation, and you will see more and more of this as we continue down this road. This is why some of the measures we take today are so important. Be prepared for potential legal actions, including lawsuits from affected individuals, customers, or partners. Organizations should have strategies in place for responding to legal challenges. There are already organizations suing vendors that have been impacted by a MOVEit data breach. So not really their fault, unless they failed to patch. But the Move It IT breach, Move It breach, it's not Move It IT, it's Move It breach, which is a file transfer application. Was a vulnerability discovered in that application. People are already suing the organizations that were impacted by this, even if it was not through any negligence on their own. Regulatory investigations. Regulatory bodies may conduct investigations to assess an organization's compliance with data protection and cybersecurity regulations. Be ready to cooperate with and provide necessary documentation. The FTC and the OCR will do this. Document retention. Maintain records of all incidents response activities, including communication logs, findings, and reports for compliance and legal purposes. Insurance coverage. Review cyber insurance policies to understand coverage in case of a cybersecurity incident. Compliance with policy requirements may be necessary to access coverage. So if you were not doing what you're supposed to be doing, you're going to be on the hook because the insurance company will not cover it. Lessons learned. Audit and compliance improvements. Use incident lessons learned to enhance compliance programs, ensuring that policies and procedures align with regulatory requirements and legal disclosure. Public disclosure. In cases where public disclosure is required, work with legal counsel to ensure that the disclosure is accurate, timely, and compliant with legal obligations. Often that is done on a website. Did not see any questions in the chat. So no questions there. If there are any questions, feel free to just jump in. And now it's time for a free gift or two. So first of all, you have we have an IRP template. So if you don't have an incident response plan in place, you want to get started on one. It's a basic template, but it pretty much outlines what you need to do. You could scan that QR code or just go to that bit.ly link, bit.ly/IRP Nuage Tech. You don't even have to enter your email address. It'll take you right to a document that you can utilize to put together your own IRP. That's our gift to you for watching this or attending. But I also want to talk about Zero Trust, because we have not talked about Zero Trust at all during Cybersecurity Awareness Month. And it is a now critical component in the war of cybersecurity. Zero Trust just means that nothing is allowed until somebody's had a chance to review it and approve it. Because often what happens is you click on a link and it downloads a script, and that script runs because you're clicking on things and just saying yes, allow, yes, allow. We've all been guilty of that in the past. And that script now is malicious and does damaging things. Zero Trust is important. It's the U.S. government has already said that all their agencies need to implement Zero Trust. We implement Zero Trust in every client that we have. And we will be doing a webinar on that in 2 weeks. Again, next week we will not have a Tech Talk Tuesday because we have a private training that we're doing. But Zero Trust is critical. And so join us in 2 weeks for that. Download your free IRP template. And as always, if you want to learn more about us, what we do, or any of the information that we share a lot of information publicly to help prevent data breaches. Again, we believe in collaboration, and we work with other IT teams already on different things. So follow us at Nuage Tech, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, probably a few other things too, but those are the big ones. So until the next webinar, if there are no questions, I will end it here. We ran over a little bit today. It's the first time. Until next time, stay secure.